Joining us now, CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist Dave Jacobson and Republican strategist Ashley Hike. Good to see you both. Let's circle back now and start with word that the president may in fact be considering at least firing Robert Mueller, the special counsel investigating Russia. So I guess stock up on the Dramamine because things are about to get pretty rough out there if that's the case. We don't know if it's true, Ashley, but we do know is that many conservatives have tried to at least start to discredit Mueller in recent days. Former House Speaker Newt Gingrich, for example, when Mueller was appointed, he was initially supportive. He tweeted this: Robert Mueller is a superb choice to be special counsel. His reputation is impeccable for honesty and integrity. Media should now calm down. But by Monday morning, Republicans are delusional if they think the special counsel is going to be fair. Look who he is hiring. Check FEC reports. Time to rethink. Actually, is this an attempt to undercut Mueller, discredit whatever the findings of the investigation are, even before they're out?
I think that the GOP is so used to the negative attacks that are happening in the media that they are basically preparing for what is going to come. Russia is it's a dog with a bone. Media is not letting go of this topic, and I think they're basically bracing for what's going to come with the investigation.
But how do you go from an impeccable choice to, you're delusional if you think he's going to be fair?
I think all the information that came out with Comey in the testimony basically calls so much more into question, right? And so now with the leak, not knowing who to trust, realizing it's part of the FBI, Department of Justice, I think that that's where everyone's starting to say, like, okay, wait a minute, if they're such good friends and he's the prosecutor, his job is to prosecute and go after whoever the target is. In this case, is it President Trump? I think that's where they're starting to draw some concern.
Well, Dave, what do you make of this about face, though? Because again, Robert Mueller was someone that was praised on both sides of the aisle, and now this. I mean, you're hearing criticism now from people who are praising the appointment.
I think what's fascinating also is this statement from the former Speaker Newt Gingrich comes on the heels of news in Axios this morning that Michael Dreeben, who's from the Solicitor General's office, who's argued over 100 cases before the U.S. Supreme Court, who specializes in criminal law, I think raised real concerns in Trump world. And I think that's why you've got some of the talking heads, some of the mouthpieces, whether it's Newt Gingrich or the CEO of Newsmax coming out raising the possibility of just doing away with the Mueller investigation.
Actually, legally, the president can fire the special counsel. Ask President Nixon how that worked out for him.
Right.
This does have overtures of sort of the Saturday Night Massacre. I put it to you, Ashley, that only Donald Trump can actually truly make the decision here of what the cost-benefit analysis is. Is the political blowback from sacking Mueller, because there would be plenty, is that going to be better than the outcome of the investigation? And I think his actions in the next couple of days regarding Mueller might give us an indication, right?
Right, I agree. And I think that tomorrow when Sessions testifies that he's going to be the one who actually puts this to bed.
But what do you think the political fallout would be, though, if this were to happen, if President Trump were to terminate
I think it's a game changer. I think it's a game changer, and I think that's the point. Look, right now you have the Trump administration sort of spiraling out of control in a flat-out nosedive. You've got Republicans nervous. They haven't accomplished anything meaningful in terms of legislative victories through both the House and the Senate, and now you've got this ongoing, ever-evolving, ever-salacious Russian probe that continues to create headlines, and it's hurting Republicans down ticket. As we move to 2018, Republicans are getting nervous, and so I think you're going to see some pullback from Republicans, from the rank and file in the House and the Senate.
Well, that nosedive continues because on Monday, yet another blow for the travel ban, yet another court ruled that it was not legal, this time exceeding the president's authority. Part of that ruling, which was really interesting, is that the court considered a tweet from the president on June 5, just the other week. This is the tweet. This was just after the London terror attack. That's right, we need a travel ban for certain dangerous countries, not some politically correct term that won't help us protect our people. Now, the three judges decided that because of that tweet, Trump was actually talking about the countries being dangerous, not the citizens. There's a whole bunch of legal argument there, but actually, the politics here, how many more times will the president shoot himself in the foot with a tweet before he stops tweeting?
Well, for starters, that the Ninth Circuit is going to shut down that travel ban no matter what. Whether he sent that tweet or didn't send the tweet, like, there is no way that travel ban was going through through the Ninth Circuit, period. However, I think you need to look at the law, and everybody agrees that the law is legally sound. It's the same thing that Obama had, or the executive order, I'm sorry, is the same thing that Obama had put through, and it doesn't even affect more than 90% of the Muslims in the world. So,
but how do you explain that when you, especially when the judges cited President Trump's tweets and also Sean Spicer's comments in the White House saying that anything that President Trump tweets is officially coming from the White House. So he is shooting himself in the foot, don't you think? I mean, like Lindsey Graham said, is he not his own worst enemy? And we're talking about President Trump here.
I think that once it gets to the Supreme Court and we look at the actual language of the law, which is what we're going to what they will focus on, the president will be vindicated at that point.
I think largely this has been called unconstitutional because it puts forward a religious test, asking people essentially, to come forward basically if they're a Muslim from one of these countries and they can't come into the country. Number one. Number two, the issue at hand also is that Donald Trump tweeted out last week that he supports not the watered-down version, but the tougher, harder version, the first version, which, by the way, included Iraq.
Okay, well, all of this naturally making life very tough to work in the White House. Just ask Ivanka. Listen to this.
There's a level of viciousness that I was not expecting. I was not expecting the intensity of this experience. I think some of the distractions and some of the ferocity was I was a little blindsided by on a personal level.
Not expecting the viciousness. Was she in a coma for the election campaign? Listen to her father.
Well, Rosie O'Donnell's disgusting. I mean, both inside and out.
I don't know what I said. I don't remember.
I view a person who's flat-chested is very hard to be a 10.
We are led by very, very stupid people.
This guy, Ted Cruz, is the single biggest liar I have ever dealt with in my life. But it's political bull. Do you understand?
I call him Little Marco, Little Marco.
Okay, forget you. Just forget it.
Ashley, her father ran one of the most vicious negative campaigns in presidential history. Is there a certain deal of hypocrisy here coming from Ivanka?
And yeah, I don't see him holding a bloodied head in his hand, in a comedy routine. And I don't see a play that's being, privately and publicly funded depicting the assassination of an individual. I think the extreme, there's language. There's been language that's gone back and forth between both parties for a number of years. But the level that we're seeing, the grotesqueness, like how bad it's gotten, and at what point is that extreme rhetoric going to inspire somebody to actually try and carry out some sort of physical, vicious attack?
Well, I think some things critics would say some of the things that President Trump has said and done have also been unprecedented and at levels that they haven't seen before. But let me switch to the testimony that we're about to hear on Tuesday. Dave, what do you expect to hear from Jeff Sessions, and do you expect him to invoke executive privilege, especially when he's talking about his conversations with President Trump leading up to the firing of James Comey?
I think it's plausible. There's got to be some real tough questions that are going to be asked, particularly by Senator Al Franken, who asked during his confirmation hearing at the Judiciary Committee whether or not Jeff Sessions, had had any conversations or meeting with the Russians. Of course, he said no. He lied to the Senate Judicial Committee, potentially causing perjury at a time, a couple of months later, obviously, after the Washington Post had reported that obviously he had 2 meetings with current Ambassador Kislyak from the Russians. The question also, I think, that's going to be asked is whether or not there was a 3rd meeting at the Mayflower Hotel in April of 2016, of course, with Donald Trump, again with Ambassador Kislyak. I think that question is going to be asked, and it'll be telling to see whether or not he invokes executive privilege on that. And I also wonder, depending on what Comey told the senators last week in closed sessions, how that's going to impact how they formulate the question.
Okay, there was the first full cabinet meeting of the Trump administration on Monday, and it seemed it was a session of who loves the president the most. Oh, sorry, that's actually the wrong tape. That's North Korean media praising Kim Jong-un for a successful missile test. Sorry about that. This was the cabinet meeting. Have a look.
Mr. President, it's great to be here and celebrate this group.
Mr. President, I'm privileged to be here, deeply honored, and I want to thank you for keeping your commitment to the American workers.
I can't thank you enough for the privilege that you've given me and the leadership that you've shown.
I want to thank you for getting this country moving again. and also working again.
On behalf of the entire senior staff around you, Mr. President, we thank you for the opportunity and the blessing that you've given us to serve your agenda and the American people.
Don't know how that North Korea stuff got in there, but actually, I mean, this seems to be a little odd, right? No?
I mean,
Yes?
he's done a lot of good work. He's trying to focus on, infrastructure and reform in healthcare, and this week is workforce development. And so I think taking a moment to reflect on your accomplishments, there's nothing wrong with that.
Dave?
I call it vomit-inducing, particularly when it came to the Chief of Staff, Reince Priebus. I mean, this is a guy who's essentially been given a deadline of July 4th to get health care passed. Repeatedly, there's been rumors about him being fired. And then, of course, he says it's a, quote, blessing to serve the president. It's ridiculous.
Quite bizarre, the moment. CNN political commentator and Democratic strategist Dave Jacobson and Republican strategist Ashley Hayek, thank you both for joining us.
Thank you.